This is Madam, and I'm coming back to you again. This is from YahooNews.com, and it's about a Missouri state representative. The article is by Jeanne K, and it says Missouri committee recommends expulsion for state representative over alleged abuse of his children. Okay? It says RickRoeber and Rebecca Roeber. It says a Missouri House committee has recommended sSummit's rep RickRoeber be expelled from office after finding that he physically abused his now adult children when they were young. In the House Ethics Committee's report released late Monday, a bipartisan group of lawmakers deemed the freshman Republican's accuser, including his ex-wife and his four children, credible. They testified he had committed acts that under Missouri law would constitute as physical contact. Okay? According to the report, the committee also found accusations of physical abuse by Roeber, including beatings in an incident that left one of the children with a scarred eyelid. The evidence in the case, which included testimony from 5 witnesses, was clear and convincing, the committee said. Witnesses described to the committee a household terrorized by an alcoholic Roeber who abused 2 children and physically abused all 4, frequently beating the children with a belt and at one point drowned several puppies. Oh my goodness. The state of Missouri has failed these children over 20 years, the committee wrote. The grim findings came less than a week after the House unanimously took the unusual step of forcing Robert to remain a state representative while the committee finished its investigation, with lawmakers citing the seriousness of the allegations. Robert had tried to resign as the committee's investigation neared its conclusion after being told of the committee's recommendation and initially indicating he would object to them in a formal hearing, according to the report. After lawmakers rejected his resignation last Thursday, he is now likely to become only the second Missouri House member ever expelled. The first was expelled in 1865 for disloyalty to the Union. The vote to expel, which will require 2/3 majority, is expected this week. Robert turned in his state capitol entry badge last week, the committee said. Lawmakers have indicated they would support further consequences for Robert, including criminal prosecution, in the report's conclusion. The committee emphasized Robert's alleged actions constituted felonies. House leader House leaders earlier had contacted prosecutors about the investigation. Testifying in his defense before the committee, Robert was combative and defensive, defiant and at times angry, according to the report. He called the accusations a political hit and said, "All my kids are Democrats." Like that makes a difference, but okay. Robert's adult children went public with the accusations of abuse last fall in interviews with the Star editorial board. The allegations, which date back to the early 90s, which also documented in a sworn deposition nearly 20 years ago. The Star's report was published after Robert had already ran unopposed in 2020 Republican primary to succeed his wife, uh, Representative Rebecca Robert, who died in July of 2019 after being seriously injured in a car crash in March. In November 2020, he beat the Democrat Chris Hager by 301 votes. He was expelled from the Republican caucus upon taking office. Anastasia Robert's adopted daughter, had said he made improper advances towards them in the 1990s. When she was 9, Samson Robert said he suffered physical abuse as a child, and Gabrielle G. said she was aware of the alleged abuse while living with Anastasia. Samson and another sibling, 3 of 4 of Robert's children, testified to the House committee, as well as Robert's ex-wife. The children not named in the report are referring to the first child and the second child, who did not testify, and the third child and the fourth child. His ex-wife, said one child told her about being abused by Robert years after it occurred. She said the second child then told her that the two had also been abused around the same time in the 1990s. In one incident, when child 2, then a toddler, kicked something over, Robert flipped the child over and just started beating the child's ass. She said the child's eyelid was struck by a nail on a board and left a permanent scar, she said. Wow. She told the committee that although the Division of the Family Services found probable cause of abuse had occurred, the Child Abuse and Neglect Review Board overturned the finding. Robert wanted the finding removed from the Central Registry because he was trying to get a position at the church that involved working with children, according to the report. The ex-wife also testified that a judge denied her request for a protective order preventing Robert from seeing the children. Child 1 testified to being abused and groomed by Robert from a very young age. When we would ride in the car, he'll have his hands on my upper thigh, just kind of rubbing it, the witness testified, according to the report. Child 1 testified that when they were 9, Robert took the child's hand and put it in a inappropriate place. He told the child if you told anyone, he would go to jail and the family would be ruined, the report said. Child 3 testified receiving consistent beatings from Robert, and Child 4 testified to similar physical abuse. Both also said Child 2 suffered intense abuse. Robert denied all accusations to the committee and said he had been an alcoholic but did not suffer from any memory loss. 2 of the children testified the abuse continued after he stopped drinking. Robert said the accusations stemmed from a bitter divorce from his ex-wife that spilled over to the children. He submitted the committee what he said were emails between himself and Child 2 from September 2007 to February 2008, in which Child 2 appears to apologize for lying, but Robert did not produce any additional emails the committee requested, and the committee unanimously agreed that this was not credible evidence according to the report. Last week, House Speaker Rob V., an Arnold Republican, wrote to the Jackson County prosecutor, Jeanne Peters Baker, requesting she help ensure the safety of a child Robert currently has regular contact with. The Missouri Independent reported. The child is Robert's step grandson who has weekend visits in his home, the committee said. V in the Rep Travis Fitzwater, the uh, the Holt Summit Republican who chaired the ethics committee, wrote, "We have learned information that needs to be forwarded to the proper authorities in your jurisdiction." Robert made no mention of the investigation in his resignation letter, saying that only he and his finance would be moving out of state. Wow. Okay. So, uh, yeah, man, we have them in the places that they don't need to be. Certain people shouldn't hold power. Um, I feel like everybody should be investigated. Um, if you're running for state office, because it's a public job. You do public venues, public speakings. Also, this is one of the people that was in charge of creating law and having law go into effect in Missouri and ultimately the United States, because he is a representative, and it is very disheartening to find out that this man was even considered. Um, what gets me the most about this story is the fact that this was brought to the proper authorities 20 years ago. 20 years ago, 2 decades ago. And they just basically swept it underneath the rug. I mean, at this point, if they're investigating Representative Robert, why are they not investigating the people that took up the case 20 years ago? Um, because somebody has to have accountability, not only for Robert himself, but also for the people that helped pave the way for him to even get as far as a state representative. Um, I feel like all the people back then should be investigated. At least, at the very least, take a statement from them, a review of the case and how it was handled, who it was handled by, and who was the person that ultimately made the decision to essentially sweep this case underneath the rug, or these accusations underneath the rug. Um, I it's just sad, you know, to be honest with you, and I hope that he does face some type of um, consequences for this, even though he escaped it for 20 years. He deserves to be put in jail. Alcohol is never an excuse for abuse, any type of abuse at all, period. Point blank. Alcohol is never an excuse um, for that. You know, this man, he knew full well what he was doing. He lived with this for 20 years. He was more concerned about, this is my opinion, he was more concerned about his political career and his aspirations more so than the health and safety and well being of his children, regardless if they are biological or adopted. And it's just sad. It's disgusting. So please drop down in the comments. Please let me know what you think about this. I do different type of stories. It's not always mainstream. It's not always, um, what's trending or anything. But if you live in the state of Missouri, you need to be aware of this. So Missouri and the surrounding states of Missouri, you need to be aware of this. We have to have some type of accountability. These are the people that come to the state capitol. They make laws. These are the people that, write the laws that we as citizens have to abide by, and they should do the same. And if they don't, just like us, regular citizens, they should be held accountable just as we are. So let's have a conversation going. Drop down in the comments. Let me know what you feel, how you feel about this. If you have any interesting news, or if you live in Missouri and there is something that I left out of this, please feel free to drop down and let me know. But until then, you guys, that's all I have for you today. Be well and take care.